What's happening? What's happening? Hold up. Let's go ahead and turn the volume down. All right. Let's go here. Go back. Drop that. All right. Let's line up the mic. What's popping? What's popping? What's popping? You are now watching J.U.K Sports Show. I am your host, Kyng Ralph, and I'm doing a lonely show today. Might have Marv pop in, but as you see, got the new podcast set up. Got me a cool little desk, light. We're gonna put some pictures up around here. But let's get we got a good show going. Let's send a shout out to the sponsor. If you want to do any podcasts like what you're watching, music videos, photo shoots, call the number on the bottom of the screen, 707 Fitboxer. As well, make sure you go like, subscribe, comment, share on all of the socials down there on the bottom of the screen. Follow me at KYNGRALPH on Threads, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, add an underscore for Twitter. Like the Facebook page, the He Say, She Say channel. Subscribe on YouTube at J.U.K Media. And follow us on at J.U.K Sports Show, J.U.K on Instagram. And got a lot to get to today. Cowboys got mixed. We're going to talk about the game itself in the next topic, but Cowboys get mixed, look pretty bad. So I'm going to play a game of should he stay, should he go? And Mike McCarthy, got to go. Get him out of here. I think that we've seen enough. Not sure if he's done enough in the league where I think he still should be in the league. But as a head coach, with this particular team, it's run its course. He got rid of Kellen Moore and used the excuse of wanting to have a more balanced offense. And then all year refused to run the football. I know Tony Pollard did live up to the hype when he looked good having and running behind an Ezekiel Elliott. But in those close goal line, 4th and 1, 4th and 2 type of run plays, Tony Pollard is just too small. Not enough bricks in his pants to be able to move the needle for them. So offense looked terrible. They were too dependent on Dak. And for me, I just seen enough that it's time to move on for Mike McCarthy. Next up, should Dak stay or go? And this is one, I think in the long run, he got to go. But as far as right now in this short term, he's done enough to where he should at least be planning on a bridge, whether it's Trey Lance, a quarterback you're going to get, another quarterback that you may draft in this draft coming up in April. I think it's time to move on. So the long term, yes, but for the short term, next 2-3 years, you should definitely be looking, regardless of what his contract situation is. Start looking for that bridge to the next quarterback. So I mentioned it before. NFC wild card games happened over the weekend. Some really good games and a lot of blowouts. I was real disappointed. It was only 1 or 2 games that were within a touchdown, with the Rams and Lions probably being the best game of the weekend. But Packers put up 48 points. It got bad, real ugly. It was 48-16 with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So the empty calories that Dak Prescott got on his way to throwing over 400 yards just doesn't really do justice how out of reach this game was. And so Dak throws 2 first-half picks. They're not able to run the ball. Packers are controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Aaron Jones, over 100 yards on the day. Romeo Doubs had a stellar game, and Jordan Love looked like, you know what, this is the franchise quarterback. And so Packers exude and keep the dominance over the Cowboys and get them up out of there. In turn, Mike McCarthy should be fired. I'd be surprised if he makes it through the week, as well as we're going to hear a lot of talks about whether or not Dak deserves that next contract. Rams and Lions. This was the best game of the weekend. I think the Steelers and Bills final score doesn't show you how close that game actually was. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Rams and Lions, Rams put up 23, lose at on the road at Detroit. Lions put up 24. And it just came down to a play where Puka Nakua was relied on a little too heavily when it comes to this Rams offense. Kyron Williams didn't really have that big of a day. I think he barely had 60 yards in the game, if he got to 60. Matt Stafford had a really good second half, but the first half is kind of what kept him in that hole. Aiden Hutchinson was, I think he had like 5 hits on the quarterback, 5, 6 hits, 2 sacks, 6 tackles in total. I think when you have a complete game of this magnitude, I think Aiden Hutchinson and the hype he had coming out of college, this was that game that lets you know I'm for real. And the Lions, although they struggled to run the football, I think Goff showed that he had enough to go toe to toe with Matt Stafford. He said put some respect on his name. Um, didn't really run the ball that well, but being able to make plays without the play action has always been an Achilles heel for Goff. And that's where I think he showed that he's that guy going forward. There's always been some talks of whether or not Goff was a bridge quarterback or was he the quarterback of the future, but he's commanding the troops and got their team a victory over the weekend, a clutch one. Regardless of how you feel, holding calls get called, pass interference get called, or they do not. I think it's ironic for the Rams to be hoping for a pass interference call to save the day, given that egregious one some years back with the Rams and Saints. Eagles and the Bucks went at it. Eagles trying to get back to the Super Bowl. Look terrible. They only put up 9. They get destroyed by the Buccaneers. It looked really bad. You can see Jason Kelsey tearing up on the sideline. And to quote Shannon Sharp, he has said all year that you never want to accept anything in a loss or in a win that you wouldn't accept in a loss. And all year we've been hearing about the Philadelphia Eagles and how well Jalen Hurts improved from the year before last to last year to now going into this year. You just never really seen that moment that he's that top 5 quarterback. We seen him play last year. He was supposed to win the MVP had he not got injured. Then he wins an All-Pro, which is hard to do. Then this year, it just never really looked like that guy from last year. And I think that's the thing is where the Lamars, the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, if you're going to be in that echelon and try to put yourself there, when things break down, can you be the quarterback that makes the difference? And we saw him do it in the Super Bowl, but we just never seen him do it since then. And take no credit away from the Buccaneers. They did their thing. Baker Mayfield was out there doing his thing. Over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Mike Evans, Mr. Consistent. The defense and how well they played. The Eagles never just looked good all year, but they were winning football games. And I try to tell people all season, like, just because you're winning, pretty much who you are throughout the season is what it is when we get to the playoffs. Dak is turnover prone, so he's going to throw some interceptions in the playoffs. And all year, the Eagles have looked suspect, and in the playoffs they got exposed. Next up, we got the AFC wild card: Dolphins and Kansas City Chiefs playing in some wild temperatures. Don't have them quite at my disposal, but if you watch the game, it looked cold. Like, it's cold when even like the fans that's in the stands, there's always that one guy that got his shirt off in some wild temperatures. But nobody had their shirt off. It did not matter how much liquor they drank. And so, Chiefs Dolphins, I going into the game, I already had Kansas City winning it. But once I seen how cold it was, the Dolphins do not play well in cold weather, and it showed. Outside of one bomb from Tua to Tyreek, they never really had much going on. And although Tua didn't have a crazy bad game when it came to turnovers and protecting the football, you just showed what it was a perfect example of what Cam Newton talked about when he was criticized for calling people game managers. And at the time I said whether I disagreed or agreed with him, I felt like he deserved to be able to have that. He has that right to have that opinion. But I did disagree with some people. I do agree that Jared Goff is a game manager, but in this game that just happened where he was able to eke out the victory in a close one, he showed that he was more than a game manager in that moment. But Tua showed us he's a game manager. When you're not able to run the ball like they have all season, you're not able to get those big splash plays. Can you matriculate the ball down the field methodically in order to get the victory? And he just wasn't able to do it. And so, Chiefs had a great game. Defense played very well. They're a top 5 defense all year, so I wasn't surprised to see that. But I was curious to see, with it being how cold it was, for the Chiefs to have to go through a game with no drops. Clutch. Can't take it away from them. I'm curious to see what happens next. And with the Chiefs and Bills in the next round. But Browns and Texans next. Browns and Texans. Browns get destroyed. It was bad early. I remember I was at work and I had no clue that they had the early game. So I go look at the score, see what time the game is on. So I'm supposed to be off that night. And I see, man, it was like, I think at that point they were already, it was like 27 to like 10 or something like that. And I'm just looking like, yeah, no, it is wraps. They're getting destroyed. And it's not even close. And so shout out to CJ. CJ had a heck of a game. Flacco, I guess you could say the clock struck midnight on Cinderella. And Joe Flacco threw two back to back, two interceptions back to back, pick sixes. And with the way that CJ and that offense has been able to play surprisingly all season, had a heck of a season. CJ might have possibly had the greatest rookie season, if not, he definitely had the greatest quarterback rookie season. But as far as as an individual, there were some other players as rookies that played very well, went to the playoffs, possibly could have won an MVP. But as an individual, what CJ was able to do this past season has been nothing short of remarkable. I tried to tell y'all that the Panthers should have taken him over CJ, not CJ, but should have taken him over Bryce Young. Now you can say whether or not it's coaching, D'Amico Ryan's, Slowick, and the way that the players around him stepped it up. But I have always said that I felt like he was a difference maker, where Bryce Young is probably going to cut his teeth more as in the conversation of a game manager. Like I said, nothing wrong with being a game manager, but when you're picking in the top 5, top 2 picks, you need somebody that's going to move the needle. And I think that CJ and what he's been able to do, lead that team to a victory. Defense played real good, real well. Will Anderson number 3 pick, had a sack in this game, pick six, picks, pick 2 pick 6s, one by former Bama player Chris Harris, and they're playing great football. I can't wait to see them go up against that number one Ravens defense after they just went up. I think the Ravens is 2 and the Browns were number 1. So to get those teams back to back, going up against a Lamar and a high powered offense, they've been looking real well oiled machine. And so I'm curious to see what happens next. Steelers and Bills. This is the game I talked about where I said I felt like the game was way closer than the score would show you, or the final score would show you, because halfway through the fourth quarter, it was 17-24. Bills are driving. It's an opportunity for the Steelers to get off the field, and they just weren't able to make that key stop. And I'm gonna talk about Mike Tomlin a little bit later, when it comes to how much respect he should be getting given the roster on this team. But the Steelers being in that game down to their third quarterback with Mason Rudolph once again, and being in a playoff game with an opportunity to win, heck of a coaching job. Aging superstars, people are injured on that Steelers team, and he was in the game. It just, when you're playing a top 3 quarterback, Josh Allen's going to make a play, he's going to make a throw, and be able to get his team to a victory. So didn't really expect this game to be as close as it was. Now, mind you, the final score says it wasn't really that close, but it just was one of those things where Josh Allen was able to make a play, get a touchdown, and the Steelers could not, or Mason Rudolph could not lead his team to a touchdown to get the game to a closer margin within striking distance, is what you would say. And so, got the division rounds up next. Oop, I made a boo boo. I forgot to put the division round in my topic bar. So we got the division round on coming up on this weekend. So we got the Texans and Ravens, Packers versus the Niners, Chiefs visit Buffalo, and the Buccaneers are going to Detroit. And I think all of these are games that have happened this year. I definitely remember the Texans and Ravens playing week 1. CJ looked good, but that Ravens defense was just too much for him. Packers and 49ers, that's the one where I'm not 100% sure. I have to look that one up to see if they have played this year. I know the Chiefs and Bills played, with the Bills getting the victory earlier this season. And then Lions and Bucks played, I believe, week 5 or 6, and it didn't go well for the Buccaneers. So I'm gonna make my predictions, and I think with hold up now, phone is tripping. Wasn't able to find if they played or not, but y'all let me know if the Packers and 49ers played this year. I thought they did, but I don't quite remember. But Texans and Ravens, I think CJ. I just don't see. I picked the Ravens before the year started, so I just don't see CJ being able to lead that team to a victory against that defense. I think that Lamar and what he's been able to do this year, ability to move outside the pocket, the ability to keep his eyes down the field. Odell Beckham is coming on lately. Rashad Bateman as a number 3. Zay Flowers, and what he's been able to do. Swiss Army knife, his emergence. Next year, I definitely got him being 1,000-yard receiver. And so I think, especially with Isaiah Likely, not sure if Mark Andrews is going to be able to come back. I've heard some rumblings about him coming back. But they're playing so well that why would you even mess up the the chemistry for someone that may or may not be able to contribute at a high level. So I'm gonna go Ravens. I think it'll be close. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I think after this week and all these blowouts, the closest game we had was the Rams and Lions, and then the Steelers and Bills was the second closest, and that one was a 14-point difference. So I think this week coming up, we're going to get a lot more closer games, and I got the Ravens winning by a touchdown over the Texans. Ravens are at home. I got the Ravens getting to the Super Bowl. I picked them at the beginning of the year. Now the other team that I picked on the NFC side, we're not going to talk about them because they're not in the playoffs. So I got Packers and 49ers, and 49ers are at home. It's the thing about the Packers is every time I'm like I just count the Packers out 100%, regardless if it's Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and Jordan Love, and I'm kind of aging myself at this point, but it is what it is. Every time I just say like, "Oh, they finna get smacked," they find a way to be in the game, and then the games where I think they about to destroy the other team is the times where they just won't play so well. So as much as I want to go Packers and say and count them out, there's an opportunity. But 49ers, I think they're a complete football team, best team in the NFC all year. And spoiler alert, I got the Ravens and 49ers in the Super Bowl. But I think the 49ers are going to be too much for the Packers. I don't think Jordan Love is going to be able to keep up with the firepower that and the amount of points that the 49ers will be able to put up. So I got 49ers getting past. I think this one's gonna be like a 2 touchdown game. And then next thing you know, I got Chiefs and Bills in Buffalo. Josh Allen is 0-2 against the Chiefs in the playoffs, or against Pat Mahomes specifically. Um, is the third time the charm, and this is the part for me where I'm like, if they were going to get the Chiefs, this is the opportunity. They don't have the wide receiver core that they have had before, the firepower. With given the talent that they have, if you go back and you do that 40 seconds, 45 seconds to get down the field, I don't think Pat be able to do it with this team. And so Buffalo on the second half of the season has been one of the hottest teams in the NFL. So I'm gonna go Buffalo. I think Josh Allen will be able to protect the football enough to get a victory. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a close one. I think this one is gonna be like a field goal or a touchdown. I wouldn't take the Bills plus anything or minus anything higher than 7. But I do think that it's gonna be a close one. I think the Bills, third time's the charm. Josh Allen's gonna finally get that victory over the Chiefs. Next up, I got Bucks Lions. I think it's gonna be a lot of what happened earlier in the season. Now that one was the margin of victory was so much bigger, and how I think this one is going to be. I do think this is going to be a what do you call it a field goal game, not a field goal game, but it's going to end in a field goal or within that amount of point differential. And so I got the Lions over the Buccaneers. I think the ability to get after the quarterback that Aiden Hutchinson brings, as well as the weapons. I think the weapons that the Lions have on the offense is going to be too dynamic um, for them to be able to stop. And I think Jared Goff is playing with so much confidence right now that I got 49ers Lions in the NFC Championship game. And so Nick the Slick, Nick Saban, he retired about a week ago. If you're on Facebook, check on my man TJ Givens because he's going through it right now. Nick Saban retires from Bama. I almost knocked my coffee over. That'd have been tragic on my brand new desk. But is he the greatest college coach of all time? specifically talking about football here. And I think it's hard to argue anything but him. And I know I don't have the greatest reference points when it comes to coaching in the NFL. I'm not NFL, but college football. But you got the Urban Meyers of the world, Nick Saban. You got like the Bear Bryants. I forget what my man named that coached the Buckeyes. But I think it's hard to be able to go against it. The success that he's had with Bama alone is nothing short of phenomenal. What he's been able to do, I think, is like 12 years, 10 to 12 years. He's been at Bama. What he's been able to do, like 5 national titles in that time span, the amount of first rounders that he's had, people that are in the NFL. Currently speaking, I just brought up two when I talked about the Texans alone and their contribution to that victory, that playoff victory. And so I think his step on the game is going to be. You can say he's the Bill Belichick of college football. I think everything that he's been able to do, the way that defense was going to come ready to play. Um, Always, it wasn't until later over the last 6 years is when he started to have quarterback play that is going top five. The Tuas, the Jalen Hurts, the Mac Jones, to Bryce Young. We'll see what happens with Milrow. Although I don't think that he's quite the talent that those guys were. But his step on the game with Bama alone, not to mention Michigan State and LSU winning a title at LSU, I think that he's the greatest college football coach, and it's much as I hate Bama, it's hard to go against it. And so Dwayne Wade is getting a statue unveiled at the end of the month. Udonis Haslam is getting his number retired on January 19th on Friday. Do I agree with it? And I think I think Udonis Haslam specifically, you got to think about what he means for the city of Miami, being someone from Liberty City, going to Florida, playing in Miami for 20 years, never played for another team. You can call him Mr. Miami, Mr. 305, whatever you want to call him. And so I think what he means to that team and that organization, I agree with it, but I wouldn't go as far as to say like I don't think Udonis Haslam is a Hall of Famer, but I think what he means to the Heat organization is worth retiring his number. Um, Although he's not the one getting the statue, Dwayne Wade is. And so when it comes to the retiring of the number for UD, I agree with. When it comes to Dwayne Wade getting a statue, I agree with that one as well. I think I remember when they drafted him and how he played against the were they the New Orleans Hornets at the time? I believe they still were the New Orleans Hornets, and they were still in the what do you call it the Eastern Conference on that side at the time. It might have been Charlotte, but I just know he had a shot against Baron Davis. And watching him play, you seen that promise, and then to see when Shaq was traded after that, the relationship he had with Kobe about whose team and whose team it wasn't. When he got to Miami, there was no argument right away. He said it's Dwayne Wade's team, gave him a nickname, Superman and Flash, and he took off from there. And so the career that he had, how long he played for the Miami Heat, and what he still means to that organization, I don't see. And he's the obviously the greatest Miami Heat player to ever play there. No disrespect to the Tim Hardaways, Alonzo Mourning was another one that could probably be one of their greats. If not, he's in the top three. But what Dwayne Wade meant for that organization, I definitely see a statue out front of the building as you're walking into the stadium, similar to a Kobe, similar to Mike. And if LeBron doesn't have one in Cleveland, he definitely should. And the injuries are starting to pile up. Going into the season, you knew Steven Adams was not going to play for the Grizzlies. You knew Ja was going to be out for 25 games. Then he comes back within 2 to 3 weeks. He's out with a torn labrum for the rest of the season. I just seen Desmond Bain is supposed to be out a few weeks. I don't think it was 6 weeks. I feel like that's a long time, but I feel like it was definitely a few weeks. And watching them play, some of the young guys getting minutes while actually learning through mistakes on the court, while also it could work its way into a positive. I'm not one of them people that would say go out there and just tank, but given injuries, it can work your way. It can work your way, like getting a top 5 pick while you also have JJJ, Desmond Desmond Bain, you got Ja. So at that point, you have a point guard, you got a 2, and you got a 4. So now you got an opportunity for you to be able to fill out the rest of the roster with young talent that could be future, um, someone that could be there for the future. And I think that they have really good players, but I think they need a third person offensively that can step in and be at least a 18 to 22 point scorer on a nightly basis. And then Jaren Jackson has showed that he can be really good on defense, but when it comes to offense, he's too inconsistent. Like with no job, you would expect to get 25, 30 from him on a nightly basis. And it's just not happening. And so I think when it comes to these injuries, although I felt like Kenny Lofton Jr. was perfect for this team and what they're looking for right now, I think he really fit the the mold of what they could have used, being a big body scorer who can play alongside Jaren Jackson, but they gave up on him. No clue on what happened there, but hope has all the success in the world with Philly. But yeah, it just never really made sense to me what they were doing. So I think that with these injuries, they can turn this into a positive. I know some of the vets that they signed over the offseason is not really one trying to hear that. So we might see them be major players in this trade deadline coming up. But I think they can turn these injuries into a plus. Next up, we got our quick hitters. Rumor report. I seen Colin Coward bring this up. I seen it on Twitter. It is talked about right now that the Raiders are going to keep Antonio Pierce and bring in Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator, which I agree with these moves 100%. You've heard me since day one. Antonio Pierce should be our quarterback. I mean, our head coach. I think that the juice that he brought to the building, the way that the team has played for him defensively, um, I s- I don't have the numbers, but when you watch them play, they play like a top 5 defense since he's been the head coach. Now the record doesn't necessarily show it, but I think that's more indicative of the quarterback and offensive side of the football. So as bad as Cliff Kingsbury was as a coach, he never had anything less than a top 10 offense with those teams in Arizona. And so I think that there is something there to be able to bring him in as a offensive coordinator. And you have talent. You have Josh Jacobs, White, Mayer, Devontae, Jacoby Myers. You still have Hunter Renfro. We'll see what happens with that contract situation. And 2 young wide receivers. Then to put that on the other side, you got Max Crosby. You move Tyree Wilson inside. Linebacker play was pretty good. and you still got some good young DBs. We need a little bit more depth because when one or two get banged up, then we start looking kind of suspect in that back end, looking like lunch. But I think these are some of the right moves, and I think the Raiders are going to get themselves in the right direction. Originally, I had this one as a topic, but I felt like with me doing the show by myself, I didn't necessarily need to make it. I can just make this one something real quick. And the question is, does the Mike Tomlin disrespect need to stop? And I'm here to say yes, it does. I don't understand it. My man has had 17 consecutive, and I don't know if you know what consecutive means, but it means one after the other. 17 consecutive winning seasons. He's never had a losing season as a head coach of I think head coach, period. Because I think he's only been a head coach with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so the questions about him leaving, being pushed out the door, I just feel like it's disrespectful. At some point, like if we can never talk about Bill Belichick being fired and how bad of a coaching job he had over the last couple of years, although he doesn't have the Super Bowls, but 17 years. I've been out of high school for 17 years, so I know how long that is. And the success that he's had with that team, given the roster, when he's not the one building the team, is one of those things that he was down to Mason Rudolph and won 3 games in a row to get into the playoffs. And in this league, if you don't got a quarterback, good luck. Good luck, my guy. It just is what it is. And so it's got to stop. I feel like Mike Tomlin deserves a lot of respect. Let him walk out on his own terms. Now, is he above reproach? There's certain decisions that he's made. They held on the Ben a little bit too long to where it put them in this hole that they're in currently when it comes to the quarterbacks. They had ample opportunities to get a quarterback at some point, and now they're stuck with Kenny Pickett, and we'll see. And the issue when you're having winning seasons, you're not in the top 10 to be able to get a Drake May, a Caleb Williams, or um, Daniels. So now you're kind of going to be stuck with the decision of a JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, or Bo Nix, or Cam Ward, and see what can you make something happen of it when none of those guys are a slam dunk. Embiid just put on a clinic against the Nuggets. Him and Jokic. Jokic did his thing as well. I think he had like about 25, 16, close to a triple double. But Embiid just had a better game. Offensively, 41 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists. And these are the reasons why I've said for years that Embiid was the better player. Now, given their offenses, there's a debate there whether or not who's better or not. But in my personal opinion, I think the contribution on defense as well as what he does, how he dominates on offense, Embiid is the better player. But given this year and the success that they've had and he's had individually, I think he had 16 games of 35 and 10 until tonight in a row. Embiid should definitely be the MVP favorite. Um, the numbers that he's been able to put up are even. I think he's on par to win the scoring title. It just comes down to it. Will he play the 65 games? And he just made a statement yesterday or within the week that he's not gonna damage his body in order to play enough games to win the MVP. So I feel like the only way he doesn't win is if he doesn't play enough games. And right now, I just don't see him not playing enough games. But we'll see. You never know what happens with injuries, and especially his injury history. That's something to definitely keep a watchful eye on. And so, Washington coach, former Washington coach DeBoer, goes over, packs his bags, takes his talents to Alabama as their new head coach, replacing Nick Saban. Definitely going to be a tough job. But coming from the Pac-12 and the amount of games that I think he was like 103 and 21, something along those lines, as a head coach for Washington. And I think what he was able to do was he's a really good, high quality coach. And I think that his offense, is definitely going to look different because I think he's much more of an offensive coach that is not going to be the same dominance. So it's like, will he have more or less success than what he had in Washington? And I think it's going to be a little bit less success because I think it's going to take some time to get the players that he wants that fit his system and then go from there. But I do think he'll have success in the long run. Now is don't we got to make sure we don't do the comparison game because he's never going to have the success that Nick Saban had. Mikey Williams has transferred, got his case taken care of. I think I think he's on probation if I'm not sure, but he's moved on from Memphis, transferred to University of Central Florida. And the question is, will he live up to the hype? And I think he still can, as long as he can use this as motivation, stay out of trouble, get yourself back in order, and get back in the gym and stay focused on the gym. The gym is why and how you got here. Hoop is how you got here. So stay focused on the hoop, and else is going to fall in line. I think that sometimes when we give people success or too much praise too early in life, it can lead them down a path of destruction. And not to say that this is the case. I don't know. I wasn't there for the situation. All I know is the reports, articles I've read, and some of the things I've seen him post that are low key alarming. And so I wish nothing but the best for that young man. I have been talking about him for years. He's the person that I'm can't wait to see in college as well as the NBA. And so I hope he gets there. I hope he gets every opportunity to showcase who he is and what he can be. And I mentioned it before. Make sure we go and we follow all of the socials on the bottom of the screen. You can follow me at KynGRalph on TikTok, Twitch, Threads, add an underscore for Twitter. Make sure you go and like, subscribe, share, comment on all of our socials from Instagram, J.U.K. Sports Show, the He Say She Say channel on Facebook, and Juke Media on YouTube. Thank you all for watching. See you all next week. We out of here. Love, peace,